Step one, I'm going to break down this whole machine. That's been in there a while. There's a bolt back here. On the back of the feed screw that keeps this from being screwed out too far. 1 inch. On a disc machine, a disc and drum combination machine, it has the gearbox attached on that same thread. The feed screw is pretty much the same. There are some differences in what they did over here on this end, where they put the thrust shoulder on the shaft, but the rest of the screw is pretty much exactly the same. They kept grease in it. That's a good sign. This is an older cast steel machine. You can tell by the rust. They're really heavy and they're a big pain in the butt to move, but boy, that steel body is so stable. Provided you have it on the machine like this, mounted on a solid bench. It's like pretty, the more solid the better. Big, heavy, stable machine like this just doesn't want to let the rotors shatter because of its girth and the fact that cast iron and cast steel, it really doesn't get much better at vibration dampening. They got mass and they're really kind of happy being what they were. Okay, so I got that into the machine apart so I can get around this thing easier. Now comes taking this end apart. I'm basically just going to pull the end cap off of here, pull the bearing off of here, take this whole cover off, and then unscrew this shaft without the gearbox being engaged. Somebody's already been messing around. They don't have the right stuff over here to begin with. They still have the double D washer, but this is supposed to be a spring washer, like a wave washer. Okay, we got lucky. They just fed this all the way in after this lever got broke off. It got fed all the way in until it locked everything up. So I'm just going to screw this shaft right on out of here, because there's no There's no easy fix in this, putting it back together. I got to take it all apart to get that shaft in there. Besides, when I rebuild these, I always go through all the gearboxes. Normally, that whole thing comes apart without having to take that whole gearbox apart. I could just remove the spindle lock, remove the set screw from there, unwind this all the way, and it'll slide right off. Sometimes you have to like put the drawbar back in there backwards and tap it out a little bit to get it to jump off the end, but that's basically it. And unlike IKEA stuff, there's no extra parts on this machine. Don't lose nothing. Can't lose any of this stuff. Before I slide that in, I want to clean up the shaft. This should slide with resistance, but it should be like smooth. It shouldn't have any kind of like grainy or gravelly feel to it. It should be like stiff, but you're only feeling like a massive area of adhesion between the different parts and the gear oil. So like on a super hot day, this will move pretty freely. On a machine that's like frozen solid, this will be stiff. That's normal. If you live in a really frozen environment, you should probably have a really thin gear oil in the machine. If you live out in the desert, yeah, you're not going to have that problem. I mean, it still gets cold, but not that cold. Put this up on the thing. Yeah, that's up on its end, not off the end of the bench. Ew. Like a total case of yucca. These aren't the factory bolts. Somebody else did something else there. Probably the same guy who tried to fix it before. Apparently it took him a while and he lost some of the parts. Ew. A melted, ooey ground wire out of a crummy looking motor harness that's melted its way to nothing. We're going to ditch all that wiring. I'm going to put another motor harness from the motor. This is trashed. I'm going to put a new plug. I'm going to put a new switch too. Put a more correct bolt back in there. This is the old shut-off switch for when they had a special switch here that had a pin in it, and that pin was part of the tooling that went to use a shoe grinder or a brake drum hard spot grinding tool. So they had a pin that was tapered that went in here, and when you pulled out the tool that held the drum grinding, hard spot grinding tool, you couldn't turn on the machine, because if you turned on the machine while the grinding tool fixture was on there, it would break something. Either it would destroy the brake tool or it would shear off something internally in the machine. So that was a safety switch. It wasn't really any kind of relay or anything. It was just a safety to shut it off. This motor is going to be a pain because they got some weird bracket in here for some motor that doesn't fit on the factory bracket. At least they put in the right size motor. Oh no, they put in a 3/4. I suppose it could have been worse. They could have put in a 1/2 horsepower, which is what it came with. But these things really like having a 1 horsepower motor in. Supposed to, this is a non-rigid mount or flexible mount. Makes for a smooth running machine, but it'd be better if it was a 1 horsepower motor. Boy, that's been in there a long time. Lose that piece. Wow, that's in there pretty good. I just love it when they paint that shaft. That baby's in there good. Get out.